Alright, so our next step is to analyze the video physically. So here's what I've done here with the video. You can take screenshots of the video if you'd like. On a PC it would be using the print screen button or the snipping tool. I always forget what the shortcut is on a Mac, but you can definitely capture regions of a video or regions of your screen or your entire screen on a Mac. You're just going to have to look up the keyboard shortcuts for that one. And then I want to note on top of it what's going on. So this looks a little bit convoluted. This image has been taken into Photoshop after the notation on the screen. But I just wanted to make you aware of this program down here, Annotate Pro. It's another free program that you can download, and it allows you to draw on the screen directly. The unfortunate part is because of my screen capturing software, I can't demonstrate it for you, but if you hit this button right here, it allows you to doodle things on the screen freehand, and then you switch back by clicking on this arrow key, and you can select things and manipulate things as normal. Then if you want to delete everything, I believe it's this button right here, you just delete everything off the screen. So what I did is I would step through this video and mark down, without moving the window, leave the window completely still, these little red doodles here. The rest of it's been added afterwards, but these little red doodles here mark down the actual position of the ball on the screen as it traveled. Now there's a problem with this video as it stepped through. Each one of these contact positions shifted to the side as the camera tracked to the left to follow the ball. So what this is all of these marks on the left hand side are where the ball actually struck the ground, and then all of these markings on the right hand side are where it traveled to. Or actually, no, that's the opposite way. So these markings on the left are where it struck the ground. This marking is where that spot traveled to. So they're the different ones because I was measuring the gap in between the bounces. So here's the second contact position. Here's where the second contact position ended up on screen after the camera had panned. And I did that just by stepping through and watching a particular patch of concrete because they've got these little markings on them. And where it ended up by the time the second, or third rather, contact position struck the ground. So I'd mark all of those positions down, boom, 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 and then measure the size of the gap in between them. Okay, so here's all of those cut up in Photoshop and just pasted up here, and then lined up so that they were against each other. And I can see that the first bounce is the largest, followed by a diminishing second, diminishing, 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 on and on back, and we've got this sort of pattern created here, which creates roughly a ratio that we can follow for a bouncing ball example. Now, another complication in making these measurements is that as the ball traveled to the left-hand side of the screen and off the screen, we were experiencing the ball moving away from us in perspective, meaning that these gap sizes were probably smaller than we would anticipate over on this end and bigger over on this end because they were closer to us on camera. It's another reason to try to get things flat when you're first analyzing motion. Not a really big deal though, and I think we can ignore it safely in this case because we're getting a diminishing bounce size anyway, and any perspective effect is really going to have sort of nominal effect on it. These are largely estimated spacings anyway, even though I marked where the ball was. The ball has certain thickness and it's moving around forward and backward in space, so we don't have to be, again, very, very keen to get this exact according to this reference. This is just a starting place so that we have something to realistically base all of our measurements on. Okay. Another thing I've done here is mark down the ball size. This is about how large the ball appeared on the screen. You can kind of see it right there. And then tried to estimate this distance in ball widths. Okay, because once we step into the computer, we've got units to deal with, but those units are arbitrary. We don't know how large a unit is. We could scale the ball rig to be 1 unit exactly across, which would be more convenient. But really in this scene, I don't know if it's feet or inches that we're traveling here. So I'm going to try to use the most reliable method I can think of, which is to use the actual size of the ball to line it up along this, and you could duplicate this in Photoshop or MS Paint or whatever it is you're using to see exactly how wide this gap was compared to the size of the object you're moving to get a more reasonable replication of this bounce. This one I decided on 20, 14, 8 spaces, 5 spaces, and then 3 spaces at the end here. for the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth bounce. Okay? So that's going to give me a reasonable way to guess how far I need to move this in the computer when I'm trying to make this animation happen. This is a very necessary step when you're starting out because a lot of people cannot estimate distances on the fly. You can't guess how far something has traveled if you haven't had experience moving things accurately before, or if you've never measured against your guesses. You really need to do this in a measured way first so that you can see, are your guesses accurate? Are they inaccurate? Should you increase the size of your guesses? And it gets you a good way to estimate things in the future. Okay? This chart here is a drawn out version of all of those observations in a much more understandable way. The yellow markings are for my measurements, and the blue markings are for my timing, which is taken off of my table here. Okay, so we've got frame 1, 18, 48, 72, on and on. Dribbles, which, since they are single frame up and down movements, no need to chart that. I've got that charted over here, but this is the duration of the dribbling section, and from 186 to 330, we have it rolling almost to a stop, but it never quite stopped. So I don't want my ball to quite stop either. It's going to still be in motion at 330, which is the end of the animation. Here I've got my estimates for all the spaces. So here were my observed estimates, and then this on this side, since I started my animation from the top of his throw, I wanted to try to proportionally increase this number to guess if it had been an entire bounce over to the right hand side, how wide would it have been, and then divide it in two so that I've got an estimate for how far this first position traveled. This might be a little bit conservative. I say that could be bumped up a bit, but we'll see how it looks in the computer, and I can make my adjustments at that point if I need to, but I shouldn't need to. It should work out pretty well. Okay, so this is the critical second step in your planning when you're working off of reference. Do an analysis of what's happening physically. Try to find markers in the scene that allow you to measure correctly, and then do a chart so that you have a clear plan of exactly what it is you're going to do. This might not seem important for a ball bounce, but it is very important when the scene gets more complicated.